Hey guys, it's Chris and I'm back with another writing video. That's right, we're doing a writing video today because I have been working on a novel for the last 2 years. I just released the prologue to that novel. It may end up being chapter 2 though, I'm not 100% sure about that. Anyway, introducing the Crimson God series, book 1, that I've been working on for quite a while now. Don't worry, we're still going to be covering, new shows as they come out, anything at least interesting. So we'll definitely still be doing that, but we're going to do something a little different as we kind of dive into my own world as opposed to just kind of hanging out in everyone else's. So anyway, full disclosure, I am not a professional writer. I am published in one chapter of a nonfiction book that I did with a conglomerate of other great YouTubers a couple years ago. But I am writing my first debut novel right now. As I mentioned, I'm now going through the editing process and all that, starting with cover design, all that good stuff as well. But I wanted to give you a few things that I've learned over the last couple years because it's a lot. There's a lot to it. There's a lot. And this is the biggest hump, I think, is people actually just getting started. So I want to share my experiences and give you the top 10 ways to write your first chapter. And before we get started, this video is sponsored by my wonderful patrons over on Patreon. Really appreciate the support, you guys. You guys keep this channel going. I would like to thank my newest Patreons. Thank you to Caesar. Thank you to Michelle. And thank you to Claire. I really, really appreciate the support, you guys, as we try to navigate this new YouTube algorithm. And if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and smash that like button and hit that subscribe button right below the view window here. It really, really helps out the channel. Number 1, write something almost every day. Now, this should go without saying, but I really need to say it. You need to write something every single day, almost. And the reason I say almost is because occasionally you want to take some time off, a couple days, a day or two, whatever, to kind of just step back from your work a little bit. And then when you come back, you'll see it with a fresh perspective. So a lot of people also keep track of word counts every day. And as you see those words add up, where a sentence becomes a paragraph and a few paragraphs become, a chapter or whatever it may be, that's a small win right there and gives you some confidence to keep going. So write something almost every day, even if it's just a couple lines or whatever. Maybe you think about a few lines heading down the road while you're going to work. Maybe you're going to bed one night and you think of a couple things. Write that stuff down. But then occasionally, even if you write, a good full 3 or 4 pages or whatever it may be, take a step back every once in a while, take a day off, do other things. There's plenty of other stuff you can be doing, like watching videos like this, and then step back to your work with a new, fresh perspective, and that'll always kind of keep it fresh in your mind and keep the ideas flowing. Number 2, where do I start? Well, you start at the beginning. Now, of course, if something comes to you, whether it's a line of dialogue or some scene for down the road, certainly write that down. But you generally want to start the story at the beginning of where your story is actually going to start. Now, of course, outlines will help with this. Now, for me, I just have a kind of a rough outline of some major plot points. I'm more of the Gardner variety, I suppose, as George R. R. Martin so famously said. As far as a writer, I don't really plan every single thing out. I write the story and then kind of see where it takes me, although I do have major plot points and stuff in mind. And to help with outlining, you want to kind of follow, in general, the 3-act story structure, which is your standard story structure where you have Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, you come to a climax and close, and as you build the tension and plot all the way up to the climax. But as you can see here, it's fairly simple. It's just that the tension and action builds the story up until the climax, and that'll help you mark plot points along the way visually so you can just kind of write your way in between those. Number 3, show the normal life of your main character or your protagonist, and I mean kind of what they go through every day, but don't overdo it. Don't make it just generally boring where somebody's sitting around in school all day bored, or they're sitting in their castle or whatever, and there's nothing really going on. But you definitely want to give a taste to the reader of kind of what normal everyday life is all about, because that shit's about to change. And number 4, kind of piggybacking off number 3, introduce the problem via external or internal conflict. So what does your main character, again, specifically talking about your protagonist here, what does he or she want out of life? And really, why don't they already have that? What's stopping them? What's holding them back? All that kind of stuff. Now, this could be a past trauma. It could be relationship issues. It could be issues in society and whatever society you're creating here. But you're going to introduce the problem for your protagonist, and this is going to start building tension. And essentially, that's what you're saying to your readers is, I have a secret you don't know. I promise I'm going to tell you later. Just keep reading. Number 5, do not overdo world building. Now, I know this was a big problem of mine. When I first started, I wanted to mention every location. I wanted to mention different countries in my little world because I already had kind of a map outline drawn and started plotting some, names that popped in my head, as I did some research on history and where I'm pulling some of these names from. But don't overdo world building. Add the world as it becomes relevant. Landmarks, settlements, countries, all that kind of stuff should come up in dialogue, and as you mention those, you'll go through and start adding little backstories to those areas or locations or landmarks or whatever they may be, using whatever tools you are going to use to stay organized, which we'll get to later. So don't overdo the world building. Let the world kind of come in little pieces as opposed to just big info dumps saying, there's mountains over here and there's a big castle over here and over here there's a haunted forest and all this kind of shit. Readers really won't care until they get to know your characters. Number 6, and this is a big one, show, do not tell. So in other words, for example, if you have a character, don't just say he or she is just tired or whatever. Actually show us that your character was tired by saying something to the effect of, Ashea was yawning and struggling to keep her eyes open. So Ashea is a character in my upcoming novel, so I wanted to give you an actual example from chapter 1 of my book here, and it goes something like this. Ash called a voice through the surrounding song of commerce. She glanced back to see Mitch, her brother's retainer. Slow down, where are you going? She pretended to be happy to see him. So that's, okay, but the end of that sentence is the problem. She pretended to be happy to see him, when this could be something more like this. Ash called a voice to the surrounding song of commerce. She glanced back to see Mitch, her brother's retainer. Slow down, where are you going? She rolled her eyes but turned and smiled. So in my opinion, that second version of that sentence is a lot better because we're actually showing through some small action that the character is not really happy to see Mitch in this case, and we didn't have to straight out tell the reader that. They can kind of infer that from her actual action of rolling her eyes and then kind of pretending to smile as she saw him approaching. And to number 7, set the hook. Now, whether this is a prologue or a chapter 1, you want to make the reader give a damn and keep wanting to turn pages. So you want to introduce something that makes the reader interested, that makes them want to keep reading. Now, this could be something that sets up some kind of question that you promise to the reader that you will indeed answer later, otherwise known as tension. Now, this could be the inciting incident or the incident that really gets your story started, but that typically comes in a second or third chapter. Number 8, don't edit. Editing is a completely different step, and I promise you, you will never get your book done if you try to edit it as you write it. Don't do it. That's for another time. As a matter of fact, think of it this way. You will go over this book a million times. So from the time you start this first chapter and get to, say, chapter 30, your last chapter in your book, it may be a year or two later, you will be a much better writer. Let that future you do all the editing if you're going to edit yourself. Now, of course, I suggest getting a professional editor, but as far as just going through revisions, all that kind of stuff, because you're going to do that a million times, let your future better writer self do that. Don't edit as you write. You will be able to go back and fix that stuff later. The main thing when you first start, especially your first chapter, is get it out of your brain and onto paper. And number 9, no info dumps. Let the dialogue and action kind of hint at things to come. Again, this way you're building tension. And remember, tension, all you're really doing with tension is you're promising the reader, hey, I know something you don't know, but I promise if you keep reading, I'll let you in on the secret. Remember, people who read books, they're not idiots, so don't treat them that way. And number 10, organize. Use notepads, sticky notes, software. Better yet, use something like World Anvil, like I've mentioned before. I use World Anvil to kind of keep everything organized. Essentially, World Anvil is a wiki for your entire story. As a matter of fact, you can actually write your story on World Anvil as opposed to a standard word processor. So for example, what I do, I go through and I bold little things like places, locations, characters, whatever, as I write them. And when I go back through on another round, I'll take everything that's in bold and add it to World Anvil as a location, a character, a place. And that way I'm building my world as I go. And that way, essentially, I have my own wiki of my own world with all these locations, places, and characters that I can always go back and reference later, write backstories, etc. as I need to. And for a bonus, number 11, what the hell, for shits and giggles, watch and learn. Whether it's videos like this or videos from more competent writers, because I'm not even really a writer yet, how to write dialogue, how to build tension, how to write a protagonist, how to write an antagonist, how to write your inciting incident, whatever, etc., etc., etc. Watch and learn. This is the best time in the world, obviously, for information at your fingertips. You don't have to go to a certain school anymore and visit a physical classroom. And also, I'll give you a couple examples of really good YouTube channels that I've been watching over the past couple years. One would be Meg Latour over at iWriterly. Another would be Jenna Moresi over at Writing with Jenna Moresi, as well as Abby Emmons. Those are three, channels I've watched a lot, especially over the past 6-8 months, as I've really kind of buckled down and started, really focusing on getting this book out. So I'll leave those links in the description below if you care to check out those channels. Anyway, guys, I hope this helps somebody write their first chapter and get going. Maybe it pushes somebody to finally, decide to try to write that first chapter because they've always wanted to write a book, but didn't think they could or whatever, or didn't have the time, whatever it may be. Maybe this will help put somebody over the edge and get that book out to the world. Anyway, guys, if you dig what I do here, please give these videos a like, comment, and a share. And be sure to smash that subscribe button down below and click that notification bell so you're notified when I drop a new video. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.